Hello, I'm back. I'm going to try to do this without shaking the camera too much because I'm not at my desk tonight doing this in my room because my husband's asleep on the couch. But tonight I want to show you a very unique pen. I consider it unique. Can't find anything like it online. Um, well, I shouldn't say that. I can't find anything exactly like it online. But this is what I call my mystery pen. It is quite beautiful. It's got these gorgeous copper gold kind of flakes in the barrel, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So this pen caught my eye at a local antique store, and when I do the close, it never does close-ups well on this camera, so when I do the other angle, I will show you some of the filigree work on the clip here and some other smaller details. But the unique thing about this pen, it stood out to me because it's just so pretty. So I bought it, and then after I bought it, I found some more very cool things. So first thing that I noticed at the store was that it has a gold nib, and it is a flex nib, and the nib itself says warranted, warranted 14 karat, but it's not the 14K like you're used to seeing. It's 14 CAR. And that is quite unique, as I found in my research. The other really interesting thing about this pen, that this was the first because I am still kind of a newbie when it comes to fountain pens. I only really joined this world about 6 months ago. And so when I got this pen, it was probably 3 or 4 months ago. So it was really new then. But this bottom part unscrews, and there's a button. I didn't know what this was, but I assumed it was the filling mechanism, and I assumed correctly. It's a button filler, which makes this pen from probably the 30s. That's like the biggest indicator of the age of this pen, from the 1930s. There's a few more clues that explain a little bit more about this pen, and I'll kind of take you on the same journey. So that was one of the big clues. Button fillers were common in the 30s, didn't really get produced much after that. I think a little bit into the 40s, and not much before that. I'm not even sure if they got produced before that. The warranted CAR is an indicator that it is a European pen that imported the nib from America, I believe, is, if I remember it right. So it's kind of an interesting little tidbit there, that the nib was probably made in America, but the pen was made in Europe. I did post this pen in quite a few pen groups on Facebook and had a lot of interesting conversations. This triggered a few debates and things like that because it is quite unique. You'll find a pen with maybe one band here that's very similar, or it'll have a clip with a ball at the end instead of this like arrow shape. But it's not Parker, because the filigree work on here, I've never seen that on a Parker. The Parkers always have their typical lines on their arrow shapes. So there's just some weird little details about this pen that make you go, interesting. It looks like this, but it's not. And then a lot of them, the nib just doesn't match. And, it's just hard to know if the nib was replaced, but it really does appear that the nib is the same age as the rest of the pen. I mean, the golds pretty much match. It's kind of hard to see on here, but everything seems to be the right ages. The other really interesting tidbit, and I'll try to get this in the close-up, but it's very hard to see this not in person because you have to really get it at the right angle of the light. But there's some light etching in here that it's got quotes around it, and it says Eterna Gold. It's Eterna-Gold, not eternal. And I've looked very closely at this to make sure there's no like missing letter that got rubbed off or anything like that. But Eterna Gold, and when you search for that, you find all kinds of watches. So it's just it's a quite the mystery pen. It's very interesting. So I'm going to switch angles here pretty quickly, but I do just want to say this is one of my favorite pens. It's got a fantastic flex to it. It's just so unique. I love that it's got a mystery. I kind of hope one day to know more of its story. Oh, I did find out on Facebook. And I will look up her name before I go to my next angle of video. But there was someone who commented that is quite an expert in Italian pens, and she said it looks like it's got some Italian German parts, and she was pretty certain it might be an Ullmanns. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ullhmanns, or it might be Uhlmanns, which was a pen made by a company in Milan, but the company was founded by a German man who had immigrated there. So, and a lot of people prior to her saying this were saying it looks German and Italian. So it was really an interesting tidbit that she was able to find that particular company. So it very likely could be an Ullmann pen. That was like the best guess that we could all come up with. And it's just really fascinating pen, really unique story. I would love to just one day have someone come to me, since I live in a small town and it was at a local store, say, oh, I know the story behind that pen. That used to be my grandfather's, or something along those lines. That would be amazing. So if you live in my area and this pen is familiar, please tell me about it. All right, I'm going to switch camera angles now and show you some of the better details of this and do a writing sample. Okay, so this is kind of a precarious camera angle for me. But as you can see, this pen really has some gorgeous detailing, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's much shinier in person, kind of gets a little bit of camouflage look in pictures. So I'm hoping that this camera's angle will not be like that for video. But as you can see, there is some of the inscription for the Eternal Gold. Let me see if I can get it. And I did re-look up the information that I had learned. And the lady who wrote the book, her name is Letizia Jacopini or Jacopini. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Italian, so I'm not sure if the J is an H sound or not. But as you can see, there's the filigree. And the book she wrote is called La Storia della Stilografica, and or in Italia, I forgot the last two parts. So La Storia della Stilografica in Italia, and it is a very interesting book. It's got a lot of information. There's a section that talks about a company named Eterna, and they would mark their barrels with the term Eterna, and that marking that company was owned by Ullmanns, and Ullmann was the name of the German gentleman who started the company located in Milan. They started off making German pens with German components and slowly switched over to Italian pens. So it's really interesting because several people identified the fact that this seems to have Italian and German aspects to it. So Ullmann seems like a really good fit. The company also went by Eterno. Sorry, I'm switching between American accent and Spanish accent, and it's throwing me off. So as you can see, there's some of the beautiful detailing work on the clip. These little scrolly lines. I've not been able to find anything like that. And I cannot find a clip like this clip anywhere. I can find the shape, but it doesn't have the right scroll work. I can find different kind of scrolly work, but it's not the right shape. This is quite a unique pen, at least when it comes to what is on the internet. And I'm sorry for such shakiness of the camera. I'll have to rewatch this and see. I may have to redo this video, but for now. And then this is, let's see if I can get this in the right light for you to see the 14 car and the warranted. It really is a gorgeous pen all around. And the button feed was a fun experiment for me because I have never repaired a pen of any at all until I got this pen, and I actually opened it up and replaced the bladder. And I would open it up and show you, but with the button component, it actually is a little bit more involved. You have to take the button out of the other end and get the metal parts out, because if you twist it too much, you might tear the bladder inside. But it's quite a fun little pen. And as I said, it is a flex. So it does have this gorgeous flex, and it has a gorgeous fine line, which I love, because then I can do such pretty flourishes and still have my fun line variation. So this is my mystery pen, which I'll go ahead and write mystery, but we're also going to put Eterna almonds on here. So this is my mystery pen. That has just been a lot of fun to research and find, and just ask people on the internet if they have any clues as to what it is. And I've really enjoyed getting to know this pen, so to speak. So it's my mystery pen. It's most likely made by an Eterna pen because of the writing on the barrel. And I am not following my dot grid at all. And I apologize because I think I have a Waterman black ink in here, but I honestly cannot recall what ink I put in here. And it's made by the company named and I did look up the spelling. It is UHL. MAN. So, this is my mystery pen. And it writes really well. Some of that dryness is just because I honestly haven't used this pen in a few days, and so it got a little bit dry in there. And then also because I had the cap off for so long. But it, and there it goes again. It's usually really good about, it doesn't railroad hardly ever. This one's a really nice writer. It's definitely got that vintage flex to it, for those of you who are familiar with vintage flex. And I'm sorry, I'm going to look at this a little more closely. I do believe this actually might be my Parker green, the dark green Parker. Let me see. Yes. Okay, this is my Parker dark green. I couldn't tell in the lighting in here. It looked kind of like it was a black, but it's the Parker 4001 series dark green. So I would say that this is a fine line, not an extra fine, but a fine. Wow, my lines are really shaky tonight. Not an extra fine, but more of a fine line, and it definitely goes quite bold in the flex. So it's got a really nice line variation. And another kind of funny story here, I decided that this was my pen I was going to experiment with, which I think if I would have done my research first and known a little bit more about the pen, I probably would have been a little more careful. But it was early on, I decided, I want to fix this nib because the tines were misaligned. They kept kind of crossing like that. And then they also were just scratchy. So I took it upon myself I didn't have the proper tools, so I decided to use a nail file which I had a really fine grain nail file, but it was still kind of a little bit of a chance. And I tried to fix it like that. I tried to fix the tines by doing the pushing and stuff like I'd seen on YouTube, but I wasn't patient enough and I went too quickly. So if you ever do try to fix a nib yourself, be very patient, go very slow. And I thought I had ruined my pen, but thankfully I was able to send my pen to a friend of mine who does works with vintage a lot, and he was able to fix it for me and kind of just finish the fine tuning of the nib, made sure my bladder work was done well, and that part he did say was looked good, so thankfully that part went well. But I almost ruined the nib. It had a really strange feel after I worked with it. It just felt like all the polish was rubbed off. It wasn't quite as scratchy. It was this weird flat feeling. I don't even know how to explain it. Like rubbing two pieces of paper together or something where, it's not necessarily scratchy. It's like a big surface area. So it was probably just a big flat surface area that was scratchy. So he was able to fix it, thank goodness, and get it in working condition again. So I'm so grateful for that. And so there you go. That is my mystery eterna olmen. It's really hard to say an Italian word next to a German word and an American word. This is quite the melting pot of a pen. I love it. I absolutely love it. It is so beautiful to write with. So, if you are at, and I was really uncertain about buying this, if you are at a store like that and you're just uncertain, I say honestly go for it. It's worth the chance. This one wasn't terribly cheap for my budget, but and when I first got it, I had a little bit of buyer's remorse, but the longer I've had it and the more that I've used it and the more that I've learned about it, the more that I'm happy with it. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. So there you go. Thank you for watching.